Hello and welcome to Setting the Stage. I'm Isaac Shaker, and this is episode 80, Dynamic RPG Countries, Travis and Tetara. This episode I'm interviewing Travis, who's a StartPlaying GM, doing it professionally. His world is called Tetara, where there was a big war between the gods a long time ago, and then the Dark Elves came along and ruined everything. And now the different groups that are playing within his world are trying to build the different regions back up into more complete pieces. So let's get those ads out of the way for non-Patreon subscribers, and then we can get into the episode. I'm here today with Travis to talk about Tetara. Hi, Travis.
How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Well, like always, we want to know who Travis is outside of RPGs before we get into talking about Tetara. So who is Travis?
Yeah, so I am from the good old state of Wisconsin. I have
Nice.
been I've been around. My family moved a lot. I was born in Wisconsin. Within a few years, lived down south, the Carolinas, Tennessee, Kentucky area, and then got drawn back to Wisconsin because of a woman who is now my wife. So we've been married since 2019. A
Ooh.
couple of dogs as well, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Um, on the side, I outside of the RPG stuff and the DMing, I do write some books and um, involved with videography and photography a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I work as a second shooter, but yeah, outside of that, that's me.
Oh, cool. Any books that people here might want to know about?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone is interested in space opera type books, sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
I do have four books out in a series. They are called Sanctum of Avum. They're all on Amazon. They are on Kindle as well. But yeah, I have those. I have a bunch of spin-offs. I'm waiting to publish all of those at once. But yeah, if you like space operas, it's not really Earth related. It is a made-up world system, galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
It's been compared to, I guess, Mass Effect in some ways, from a couple of readers.
Okay.
So yeah,
That's cool. And for the videography, is there a lot of call for that in Wisconsin for second shooting?
it's mostly comes in the form of real estate and weddings.
Ah, okay.
Most of it, I would say about 60, 40, 70, 30, leans more into the real estate slash wedding. There are events that'll happen or groups that we'll work with, but that is a majority of the clients.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Yeah, it's usually for photography, it's like you have to do weddings or or accept that you're not going to get much business. So imagine it's the same for videography.
Yeah, the guy I work for, he does a great job. He's photography wise, he's been doing it for years now, and he pretty much gave up his job. He had been in his job for like 30 something years, making, really well money, and he got tired of the grind and was like, you know what? I'm just gonna take a chance, and he did, and he's making more now than he was doing that. So, yeah, it's been really cool to be part of that and see him do that, and yeah, it's just another aspect of that creative side that I enjoy.
Cool, cool. Well, we're here to talk about RPG stuff, and as I understand it, you're a professional DM, so it's another one of your little all sorts of different jobs that you're doing there.
Yeah.
And I'd love to talk about your journey from the beginning of when you started playing, how did you get into RPGs up to when you got to professional DMing?
Yeah, so I obviously love storytelling. RPGs from video games kind of feed into that. And then my oldest nephew actually was the one who got me and a few others into it. And this was back in 2018. And he had introduced us and we started playing, and I instantly fell in love. We played that for a while, and then I was like, man, I love this. There's so much freedom to it, and there's so much collaboration, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll give it a shot. And he kind of helped me through that, and one thing led to the next, and I did a bunch of these one shots and did like a space horror, and eventually it led to the first full campaign, which led to the first campaign of Tatara. So yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it, and I tell them all the time. I'm like, man, I was like, if you didn't tell me about D&D and D and get me into it, I probably never would have given it a shot. And yeah, it's one of the most exciting things in the recent years for me. And yeah, it's great.
You said you did space horror initially, like
Yeah,
within D&D as a system for that?
we kind of made up our own. I worked with him, and we kind of made up our own system. We kept it really simple. We kind of went with like a board game mindset for it. We made classes. Each class had two or three simple perks that they could do. Yeah, and we like to use the foundation of 5e, but we'll simplify it at times, and that's
Hmm.
kind of what we did with that one. And it was really fun. A lot of people enjoyed it. It was really simple. The hit points kind of worked differently. Instead of having, health, you had like somewhere between 4 and 6 hit points, and basically if you get hit or take hit damage, you would lose one of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really cool system, and really enjoyed it. And I'm hoping to maybe get back into something like that down the road.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of simple RPG is like easy to put out there, actually. Although typically people don't. It's not a good thing to make money, but it's easy enough to like publish it.
It's definitely fun, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So you said you started doing DMing as like this transition from playing normal stuff, and then you started Tetara, which I think you said started before you did the paid DMing. So that was its own thing, and then you brought it into the paid space. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes. So when we started, I believe I had 8 players. A lot of people were new to it. Otherwise, a couple of people might have had just a year or two into it. And we started with the 8 of us. And I think at that time, I mean, it was kind of chaotic and wild. And I kind of had a premise for everything and a backstory and to the world, and kind of introduced them to that. And I had a general idea of what I wanted to do. And that campaign just kind of, I don't know, not necessarily went off the rails, but it definitely like skyrocketed. We got to the point where we were running 2 sessions a week, sometimes back to back, from 10 to 16 hours.
Wow.
It was crazy. It was fun. It was, yeah. And after that, everyone's like, "Hey, I really like this. Let's keep going." I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "The whole world burned down. There's nothing left of Tatara. You guys are establishing the first kingdom. There was some conflict among the players a little bit at the end there." Yeah, so the whole premise is to kind of figure out what happened, why it happened, and the players themselves kind of get to rebuild the world and the structure and how it advances and all these other things. And yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense to feel like have a way for players to have an impact without it being like some sort of change that you can't go back from necessarily in the way to have multiple groups interacting with it. Like you can't just have like, oh, you have an impact because you stopped the demon. It has to be more about rebuilding something, or just building something in general. So
Correct. Yeah.
often it's rebuilding within D&D just because of the way it's like, oh, you have to have ancient empires to explore the dungeons of, so there has to be something to rebuild.
And we had talked about it for a while, and we're like, this makes for a great story. There is a whole world to be explored and discovered, and it's just a clean slate. There's nothing there. So every decision, every action, every path forward is going to shape the world. And that's kind of been the core of Tatara.
How much did you start with an idea there for like putting your own stuff in compared to like designing for what the players were wanting and expecting?
Yeah, so funny story. I am working on a fantasy book series, which is a lot of the players at that time, a lot of them know that I write, and they're And I was like, you know what if I took this and I combined it with 5e and just instead of, the handful of races that I have in my book, just mix and match it with D&D. And everyone was like, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. Let's try it. And that's kind of how it spurred. So the ideas were already there. There are some similarities. They have begun to change drastically from what I had planned for the book, and with what is being developed, obviously, by the players. So that's kind of how that started. The best way to describe it is I already knew A and I knew Z. Um, Originally, I was like, okay, well, here's A, here's like J, and then here's Z with a couple of spots in between. Now it's more so of, okay, this is A, this is Z, and then it's just wide open.
Hmm.
All the campaigns that I do currently have, basically each region is a campaign, and it's more of like a foundation campaign. And then right after that, there's a follow-up campaign. So how it's been working is you have this original group comes through, they kind of play the region, they play the area, and then the second group that comes through, they kind of get to shape and mold it, giving it character and their civilization, their culture, their traditions, and that's kind of where that comes into play. So it's two groups, one setting the stage and the other one kind of defining it, and that's
Hmm.
kind of what's become of Tatara at this point. So yeah, it's all based off of a book that I originally was working on, and yeah, there were tons of stuff, tons of ideas I had, and kind of carried them over.
So that was like the seed for the world was that
Yeah,
book,
it
but
was
you've
yeah,
definitely grown on its own since then.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and it grew on its own, and I was like, you know what, it started its own thing now, and I'm just gonna let it ride.
Okay. And you mentioned like sort of having one campaign in a region and then a second one. Have you ever done a third one?
Um, yes and no. So currently, one of the campaigns does it is the second campaign in the region. However, there are two opposing sides, so that there are two player parties within that campaign. So technically, there is a third one now. I hope to do something like that in the future, potentially if it grows large enough that people want to stay in those regions and in the world. Absolutely. I've even considered doing a bunch of, prequel stuff to campaign one.
Hmm.
But with my with my pacing, so a lot of my campaigns will be anywhere from 6 months to 18 months. And with the amount of regions I have and the world map and the content that I have, as of right now, if I were to average somewhere between 2 and 4 campaigns a year, it would take me roughly about 17 to 20 years to get through what I have. Um, I might die before then. I am maybe not. We'll see. That'll be
Hope
roughly
not.
about retirement age. So I'm 35. So, but yeah, there's just a ton, and there's so much to go through, and it's hard because obviously I know the end game, how it's all tied. But yeah, it's something if I could, and if I could duplicate myself, I would absolutely do more, but I can't.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sort of along that line, has anyone else asked to like DM something within Tatara? Some sort of a way to duplicate yourself.
Yeah, so I have a couple of people that are interested. They are one of the guys has been active in 7 of the campaigns. I think he's starting to step away now as a player, and he's wanting to be more involved with all the content and development and creating race sheets. And he's a pretty solid DM as well. And I've told him if he's ever interested in doing it, and he has shown interest, but a lot of it is just work-life balance. And
Right, yeah.
with the amount of content that is in there, and something I really appreciate about some of the long-term players that I have is they really do care about it and want to take care of it, and they don't want to, do anything rule breaking or ruin it for other people. So that is something that is there. There is two other people that have been interested to a certain degree, but I don't think they would actually DM. More, more so, one of them would probably do like an online text campaign.
Mhm.
They'd probably do that. Otherwise, most of them are more interested in helping develop mechanics and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like players always do a little bit of tinkering like that once they're interested in something, but fully going into DMing someone else's campaign is different. Well, not campaign, but like campaign world.
Yeah, and it's tough too because I obviously it's it's like, oh, this is my baby. I don't want anyone else to hold it, and it is hard. It is hard to be like, okay, I know you'll I know you'll follow through, you'll honor everything, you'll respect it, but sometimes it's just like, but what if they don't? What if they just go off the deep end and do this? And
Right.
so there's always that fear, that hesitation. But yeah, with the few people I do work with that have been helping me over the last couple of years, I do feel confident that if they ever did take on a role, I would totally trust them.
Yeah. And in some sense, anytime you do something creative, you kind of have to be okay with people having their own interpretation and spin on it. Even for like the books that you were publishing earlier, like your intention with what you were describing isn't necessarily what the reader is getting out of it.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little more obvious in a like interactive mode and more personal when someone takes over something that way.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's something with the world itself is it's always about perspective. A lot of moral gray. There's no clear good and evil. And, that applies to a lot of aspects, even in life. One person says someone perceives it differently. They could perceive it negatively, whereas someone sees it positively. So you know, it's inevitable. You can't avoid it. So yeah.
Well, yeah, let's talk a bit more about the transition from like having that initial group to becoming a paid DM. Did those like players you were initially playing with, are those still like your friends that you play with continuing now, or is that transitioned into like a paid to like cover your expenses kind of thing? How did that proceed?
Yeah. So, I had started talking about how, because at that time I was probably working 60 hours a week outside of D&D,
Oof.
and then putting in roughly like 15 to 20 hours just for the two campaigns I was running. So it was a lot of burnout, a lot of exhaustion. And I actually had five players who were like, you should consider doing this professionally. You should check it out. You should give it a shot. And I put it off probably for at least a year, year and a half. And they kind of hounded me that entire time. And they're like, you should do it. It's fun. It's engaging. It's more engaging than you think. I'm very critical of myself, very negative towards myself when it comes to things like that, which I think a lot of people are, they'll be very positive of, other people's work, but then themselves are like, it's whatever. So yeah, it did take a lot of persuasion and uplifting from them for me to take that leap of faith. And I did. When it started, most of them, obviously they're friends. I just let them play. We would continue and had our first group come in and then our second. And then some of them still play, some of them don't. Like I said, some of them have been around for 4 or 5 years. They obviously their schedules, if they line up, they'll hop in and join in. But I would say of the 12 original players I had through the first two campaigns, six of them are still active in the world. The other four, they hang around, they'll talk and stuff, but they over the years just kind of fell out of D&D in general with all their other groups as well. But they like to hang around and we all still talk to each other, all still fairly close. And yeah.
Yeah, that sounds actually quite nice.
Yeah, it's really cool seeing that, and all the players coming in now have been great as well, and they love it. And and it's just seeing new faces come in. It is a little awkward because obviously I was accustomed to having this group for 2, 3, 4 years, and then having all those new players in and pressure. But they've come in, and it's been great seeing people wanting to thrive and storytell and be involved and play their part and do their role. And I think that in itself has started to develop a great community.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's always cool to see something like you create that kind of takes on its own life that can develop and exist outside of your direct influence. I love it when my players talk about stuff in between sessions about like, oh, what are we gonna do next? Like it's such a exciting feeling.
Oh yeah, the I they go silent for like a day or two, and then I'll wake up one day, head into work, 60 something plus messages, and I'm like, a lot to keep up with in between sessions. But it's great. I love seeing it, and the infiltration and Exodus group right now, a lot of trash talk in between them. And one of the channels called Across the Realm. Basically, it's just shared content and
Mhm.
no spoilers or anything. But they've been going at it for a while, and yeah, it's just great seeing everyone engage with each other and wanting to be engaged.
This is a Discord server you have set up for the campaigns.
Yes. So I have one Discord server, and then within those I have different channels. Basically they're like campaign halls where I'll have out of character chat for the campaign, in character chat for the campaign, and then a voice channel, as well as a forum. I do give everyone roles to get into whatever campaign they're in. And there's a couple of other minor channels for people to goof around in or whatever, and memes and whatnot. But yeah, that's how we operate it, and we pretty much all voice through that. At one point, I was working with Roll20, and we were doing that, but I have since moved on to Foundry VTT, if you're familiar with that.
Yep. Hmm.
And we've just stuck with Discord with the voice at that point.
Yeah, my feeling is that Discord is just much more stable than a lot of other voice chat services. So yeah, I also had issues with Roll20 when I was using that, and I don't know. I started using Discord, and it's just been stable enough that I haven't felt like I needed to make a change to something else.
Yeah, 100%. I would totally agree with that.
Yeah. So how many groups do you have active right now for campaigns?
Yep. So right now I have 3 active campaigns. Just confirmed a fourth one, but that one will be replacing the Sunday group. Ties right in to the back end of that campaign. I announced that one, and the community filled it within an hour, so that was really cool.
Cool.
I do have another one. That Reddit post I had posted. There was a bunch of UK players that were like, "Hey, can you do something earlier? Can you do something earlier?" So I've been working on that. I did announce a other campaign for Mondays, Monday morning, essentially for most of the US. It would be evening for them. Haven't really done a lot of advertising for it or social media posting for it, but I do have that one planned as well. My goal is to eventually have a consistent 4 to 5 a week, and then at that point, I could fully commit to it, leave my other job that I have, and be able to do that. And that's kind of the goal. But yeah, as of right now, 3 with another one announced. It's good to go. They'll be playing in a couple of months, with another one kind of right behind that.
That's pretty cool. Do you think you'd want to branch outside of Tetara as part of that expansion, or keep it within that?
Oh, 100%. I brought this up with the small team that I have. There's including me, there's 4 of us.
Hmm.
I have brought it up, and I was really tempted to dive into another world that I have. I have 7 altogether. If they're anything like Tatara, that's 15 times 7. I don't know if I have enough time for that. But yeah, I do have those. I have all that set up as well. I've got a bunch of. I've got probably about 500 gigs worth of documents and lore and
Jeez.
images, for all these worlds that I would like to do, but I don't know if they'll ever get to that point. And they're all tied together, even though they're not on the same world. they are still tied together within the same universe. So yeah,
Okay.
there is a ton of that. I would love to get to that point at some point. I don't know if that'll be anytime soon, but I'm hoping in the next 7 to 10 years I'd be able to introduce one of those. It also just depends on how things are going with Tara and how quickly things go, how I'm doing, you know, with that financially as well. But yeah, that it's
Right.
definitely there, definitely part of the dream.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense to explore the other ideas that you have. So you're finding people mostly through like Start Playing and Reddit and maybe some Facebook groups for the new campaigns for having
Uh,
new players, not just like the old players coming back.
yes. So Reddit has been probably Start Playing and Reddit have been definitely the top two. Facebook's a little bit. There's a lot of hate on Facebook,
Mm.
especially when it comes to paid DMs or GMs, and it does get a little bit difficult at times. I do avoid Facebook a lot of the time. I'll actually use TikTok a little bit. One of the first players that joined actually was through TikTok, and
Huh.
so that was really interesting seeing that. And I have a survey that I do for all the players that are interested that sign up, and I always mention, "Hey, how did you hear about it? Where did you find it?" That's really cool to see that. But yeah, Reddit, and Start Playing by far have been the top two where most of the players are coming from.
Yeah, that makes sense. Within like the campaigns that you're playing with people, are you ever like sort of like, oh, we'll have you go through Dungeon A, and then like Dungeon A does really well for that group, so you have another group also go through Dungeon A or something like that, or is it always like you're always making new content for people?
Oh, it's always new content. I don't have any modules with Tatara. I believe everything should always be canon and should always be shaping the world. All the players in some form will always be making a difference, and that is something I will stand by until my grave.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good guiding philosophy, I'd say. Well, yeah. Let's start talking about the world. So Tatara, I mean, you describe it as like this apocalypse, and then the world is rebuilding afterwards from that. So yeah, let's start with that. What broke everything?
Yeah. So how it started is so originally the Dark Elves. They are from the Thalor Empire. So on the world map, they're pretty much one of the most western regions. They also developed their first king and queen. Well, actually, I should go even further back than that. I apologize. So if you go all the way back, there are remnants of history, obviously lost to time, that speak of a great war and then a war of the gods. The times are not clear when they happened, but roughly around 2,000 years ago, civilization collapsed. Essentially, it was called the Great Awakening, which was roughly about 300 years prior to the first campaign. So you get this long stretch of time where civilizations and races weren't developing and they are more like a primitive tribal type. Why that is, they don't know, scholars don't know. And suddenly, within 200 years, these races begin to develop written language, history again. They begin discovering relics of the past, but there's not much of it. And then, just as the world is finally getting into a place where it seems modernized, something happens with the Dark Elves. They also have their first king and queen. There's a rebellion from one of the uh, members of the royal family, who is Rika. She loses. They fall back, and within a year, both the Tribelands, the Skyward Dynasty, and Dornthon, the Aarakocra, the Orcs, and the Mountain Dwarves, all fall to the Dark Elves. Um, it's quite sudden. It's like a blitzkrieg. It's described as these creatures of night that seem to be following behind the Dark Elves, and the Dark Elves themselves seem to be distorted 3 times as fast as any other race, 3 times as strong as any other race. They're not sure what happened, and they become known as the corrupted. At that point, what's left of the Dwarves, the High Elves, and the humans decide, hey, this might be a problem. Let's make an alliance. They do. The humans take way too long to mobilize. They're cocky, they're kind of arrogant a little bit. The dwarves and elves get together, they meet up in the barrow fold. The elves ditch them because they're losing. Dwarves get slaughtered. Elves go into hiding. They abandon their homeland of Aedion. At that time, it's called Scythe. The new kingdom is called Aedion. And the last remaining race are the humans. Of course, they can't stop them. They get driven all the way to a small halfling town on the coast of the peninsula there called Scorch. There, the king falls, and then whatever left of refugees set sail for what is called a Ross, which is now called Elmwood Republic. And that is where campaign 1 starts. And those 8 players were all refugees on a ship, which essentially got sunk by the pursuing Dark Elves, and that's where everything kicked off.
Okay. And then the notes, you also said this is just the most like recent big conflict, which matches like what D&D is designed for, where you have sort of a bunch of like ancient empires. So
Mm-hmm.
there's other stuff that goes back even further for like what the gods were doing, but this
Oh,
is
yeah.
more like the Dark Elves came along and broke everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Why they broke it, they don't know. There's tons of rumors. Maybe, you know, maybe it's their god that they're so secretive about. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's something that they tried to do. There's a lot of questions up for that. The campaigns have been slowly giving clues to the players, and that has been developing, which gets added to the lore into what is called the player Bible, something I've developed for players within the community to look at and understand and see where things are going and what other groups have done, etc. But yeah, so that's the first major conflict, and the first campaign is kind of surviving that war without the world being exterminated or annihilated. And that's originally where it was going to end because we weren't sure if they were actually going to survive or not. But they did, and then it was like, oh, you have this entire world now across the sea that is totally playable, open to everyone. What happened to the gods? Where they're at? It's all a big mystery. There is one that was referred to as the Light, which has come to be known as Apollo. Very common, but supposedly it's through him that they were able to survive. And they're not all revealed to the player base yet. The team can see them, but there are roughly about 50 deities, gods, demigods, other ones known as like the Great Ones, Ancient Ones, and a few other great beings of power in Tetara. So those are being discovered as the players go as well.
Okay. So do you have those all like prepared now, or is that more like I can make up something when I need it that will fit a void?
Yep, I would say for the most part, 90% of them, or 90% of all of the gods and demigods I have are prepped and good to go. There are some minor changes as things happen because races will change, deities will change a little bit because of that. I don't like to be like, oh, this god does this, and this is, the race they work with, and this is how they're going to do it. It's more so of, okay, this is what they did in the past, this is kind of what they represent, and then based on what the players are going to do, and when they come back around, this is how they're going to react to that. So that 10% is that openness to be able to adapt to how the world is rebuilt.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. You mentioned the white as like one of the big gods. Is that just for like the region that some people are playing in now, or does it kind of vary between the different regions that exist within Tatara?
Yep. So for Apollo, he is kind of the big dog in the yard. At this time, he is a major story arc for the players. They are still trying to figure out whose side he really is on, if he's really this benevolent light, god of light, that has helped so many people. At this point, I would say at this point, it is very clear there were two sides during the War of the Gods. There is Apollo, who was the maker of the High Elves, and then there is this god named, a goddess, I should say, named Eris Morna, who was the mother of dragons or the Dragonborn. For whatever reason, it's not clear in the history that they have been recovering, but they basically opposed viewpoints of how the world should go and went to war, and Apollo was the victor. When this happened, a lot of the gods had fallen, and most of them either went into a slumber or retreated or distanced themselves from the world. And that's in Apollo, because he's one, has been kind of the forefront of the gods for all the players in the world.
I feel like he's a forefront within Greek mythology as well.
Yes.
It seems like from what you've described, there's sort of like racial countries for a lot of what the makeup is. Like the dark elves are one block, and then you mentioned like a bunch of others that were fighting against them. Is that how it's mostly set up now, or is that more of a like that's what the past was?
That's more so what the past was like. Elmwood essentially was like a melting pot of all the survivors of all the races that were known to have survived. Obviously, the High Elves kind of broke off. They did their own thing. And there is a sense of pride among the races to an extent. So that is shaping again, but it's not as intense as it was before. So yes, like humans want their own kingdom, dark elves want their own kingdom, dwarves want their own kingdom, etc. But they're more welcoming of other races than they were in the past. So there is more of a blend, but there's that, I guess, nationalism is still there.
Yeah. Are there some countries that are more like blended than others?
Oh yeah, 100% it would be the Elmwood Republic. They are they're predominantly tiefling and human, but they do have a lot of the other races that have stuck around if they've chosen to. Of the races, none of them really want to go to the mountains. So the dwarves, even though they would invite everyone, nobody wants to go there.
Hmm.
So they're kind of just like there anyway, regardless. The high elves are more. They're kind of prideful. They're kind of uppity up. They can they can be a pain in the side. They are more open to it, but they are kind of strict about it, and there would definitely be like classes within their
Hmm.
kingdom. So it varies.
Gotcha, gotcha. And are the races mostly filling those traditional like fantasy cultural archetypes? Like dwarves living in the mountains and like to mine stuff and drink alcohol, and elves live in the forest and have like this sort of upper class view of the world where they're better than everyone because they live longer, that kind of stuff.
Yep. I would say a lot of those tropes are there. There are some subtle differences. Like the orcs may not be your typical brash, mindless war type. That is yet to be seen because of the player base. They've actually been shaping them, so they're heading in an interesting direction. Not sure if that's going to continue or not, but humans are very typical. They're kind of your jack of all trades. The elves, there's a mix with them. Obviously the wood elves, they kind of just blend in with everyone. They just adapt. So they won't necessarily live in the woods, but they'll just kind of just belong with whoever, and they keep their heads low. The high elves, yeah, they do have that typical forest, but they also have that high fantasy element to them as well. So you can think of it as like Lord of the Rings, like the elves from that. So there is also that aspect to them.
Right.
So yeah, I would say for the most part, fantasy tropes are there.
Gotcha. Okay. from your description, it's like mostly the players, the ones that are like building the new kingdoms after the war. Is that, or are there NPCs going along that same route as like sort of villains or competition, maybe?
Both actually. So Aros was renamed by the players to Elmwood Republic. Scythe was also renamed by a player to Aedion. The only region that hasn't been renamed so far, um, based on campaigns that have been played in them, is Three Kings. That one kind of stuck. The people who did play it, they kept it. Other regions, though, they have been getting renamed through campaigns, so that does happen. There are NPCs that will obviously try to do it as well, or try to, put their feedback in. But at the end of the day, it is kind of the players who are shaping it and continuing to change it.
So the campaign in like that made Elmwood what it is, and the campaign that made Aedion what it is, did those occur at the same time within like the world's chronology, or were those like one was first and then one was second after that?
Yep, so they are very close to each other. Not there's very small gaps in between the campaigns. They'll overlap mostly. So, for example, the Elmwood campaign takes place, and then the Aedion campaign would take place about, give or take, a year and a half to 3 years after the events of the Elmwood one, due to sailing and etc. All of them have been within 2 years of each other, essentially.
Okay.
And there is a point coming up where once they get to a certain campaign, a lot of the other regions will happen simultaneously in the timeline. The players that are coming in with the development campaigns, those second campaigns, they are behind in the timeline, in which they understand they kind of get that, but they also understand that there's no true identity like fleshed out, so they are more than happy to do that.
Mhm.
So yeah, most of the worlds or campaigns are going to be very close in the timeline to each other. There's no like 20 years later, 30 years later. It's very tight knit.
Okay. Yeah. So you'll play one campaign within Elmwood and then sort of rewind a bit and do a campaign in Three Kings and then and so on. Not necessarily always like a rewinding the exact same amount, but everything is all still happening around the same time.
Correct, yeah. And it all kind of just ties to the overall story arc that is planned for the world. So all these different things are happening and they're all shaping it, and it's going to obviously shape the world and what's going to happen and what's coming. And based on all their decisions from all these regions, is how the world is going to be able to react in their own ways. So yeah, it's all tied together for that purpose.
Yeah. And you said that they're like mostly the each of these is kind of like happening separately, except for like within like the player interface with the campaign, except for one where there you have like two parties that are in opposition to each other right now.
Correct.
I guess general question for that one is like how do you feel like you can resolve that in a satisfactory way for both parties, because it seems like you're headed in a direction where one of them has to win and the other one has to lose. And like in some games, like that's fine. Like I don't mind if I like lose a game of basketball, but with an RPG, like you invest so much of your time in it, like hundreds of hours over the course of a campaign, and then to like sort of get a losing condition at the end is
Just
going
at
to
the
feel
end.
bad.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, so it was discussed with both groups when I had first mentioned it. Just because they're on the opposing sides doesn't mean that they don't necessarily have to flip or maybe even come together. That being said, a lot of them, I did tell them up front, if they continue to oppose each other, there will come a time where both sides there'll be a joint session of both parties, kind of
Mhm.
like a grand finale. And at that point, there are opportunities for characters to escape. This has happened in other campaigns as well, where we had one campaign where someone necessarily wasn't fully aligned with the party. The party knew this, when it came to choosing between two different options, they ended up choosing their purpose and basically portrayed them, was still able to escape, and that character was able to play in a different campaign later on. So there is always those options, those paths to happen. It's always open. If the players can think of something to get out of it in some way, that is always on the table. With that player survey, I do mention, and I talk to them in session zeros and stuff, and as a group, that all their decisions are always going to shape the world, regardless if you win or lose. And I think for the most part, almost all the players that have joined absolutely love that idea. They're totally okay with it. They're totally okay with TPKs. They love the idea of everything being shaped that way. With the opposing side, with this campaign in particular, they've actually embraced it. They've enjoyed it a lot. There's, again, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of camaraderie and trash talk in the Discord. They even have they've both also recently agreed to a joint in-game character chat for certain moments, based on a condition where they'll be able to interact with each other without necessarily being directly engaged, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of neat things that we do and try to do about that, and it's always one of those things pre-campaign. I have a long player survey to base the parties off of player styles, what they
Hmm.
prefer, their comfort level, topics, stuff like that. So that all gets thrown into the mix as well, and kind of makes the party built all around that. So that also goes a long way and helps.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's definitely if you have enough people that you can actually like separate people based off of like likes and dislikes like that, it's definitely a useful tool.
Yeah, it's I think currently the survey is roughly about 32 questions. So it's a pretty lengthy survey, but it's very detailed and archetypes, things they don't like, how people play, prefer role playing, fighting, all those typical questions, all as well as like real world situations, social interactions, characters, flirting with each other, NPCs, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does help a lot, and it just does. It's a suggestion for other DMs, I guess, is 100% do this because you will be surprised how much people will be like, I absolutely hate this. I can't be part of this anymore because of this one thing. If you have players or a decent amount of players that are interested and you are able to do a survey, 100% do it because it makes a huge difference. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've had so much success with my player base is because there are so many parties that are like-minded. Um, they're not perfect, but basically anything over 80%, I'm like, this is probably going to be okay. And it has held true to this point throughout the years.
Yeah. So this is more than just like that sort of session zero, like social, like X card safety tool kind of thing. Sounds like you're more doing beyond that into like this person likes political intrigue and this person likes hack and slash, so that like even though their safety tool naming is pretty much the same thing, they're not going to play well in the same campaign because they have different goals out of what they want for role playing.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially through Start Playing, anyone that's interested, I usually message them. I make sure that they've, read through it, they understand what's going on, and then I send them the player survey. And then if typically what will happen is if the community has already joined in some degree, I'll base the party around them. If not, usually the first one or two people that request to join will be kind of like the figurehead of that party. And then based on the survey around them, I'll be able to choose others that will match them. And I do that all before session zero through those surveys.
Yeah, no, that's a great tool to use, and I guess you can also use it to just say we don't have a group that works for you. Sorry.
Yeah, and I have had to do that, unfortunately. I do have a few people that are in the Discord, known as the Unveiled. Basically, it's people interested that haven't had a spot or an opportunity to play. And if something comes up, they're able to hop on, which recently happened with the campaign I announced. Someone that's been waiting for a little while jumped in. But yeah, I've had that unfortunate time of having to tell people, hey, this sounds great. I really love this. This is gonna be awesome. But due to XYZ, I don't think you would enjoy this as much as you might would like to, based on what they like and how this is going to go. It probably will clash with it. And I've had that, and some people get upset about it, and they're like, well, assumptions and stuff like that. I'm like, well, you did answer these questions, and they completely conflict this. So it does get awkward sometimes, but at the end of the day, it is about chemistry and people wanting to work together. People are spending, their time, their resources, their money for the best experience. To me, it's a no-brainer to have set people together for
Yeah,
those
and
campaigns.
it's easy enough within Start Playing to go somewhere else and find something that fits better. So it's not like you're kicking them out with nowhere to go.
Correct, yeah. And that's something I really like about paid players versus free players. Not necessarily that all free players are like this, but with paid players, they're usually more committed, more dedicated, um, more serious about it. They're not going to go out of their way to troll and ruin the experience
Hmm.
because obviously they're spending time and money into it. They don't want to lose that. So that has been huge help as well. Something I wasn't expecting actually when it first started happening. I was like, compared to some of the obviously with like my friends and stuff and other groups that I've played in and other DMs that I've played under, I'm like, this is very different than it's just the vibe, the structure, the understanding, and like again through those surveys and stuff, it's just a different mindset I have
I think
noticed.
it's the ability to say no to bad players goes a long way. Like there's this like stereotype for when you go to like a D&D session that's happening at a game store where the game store says, anyone can play because that's their business model, which usually means that you can't really screen out the jerks as well unless it's like really, really bad behavior. And then you're kind of stuck with them because it's not your space to control who can play there in your campaigns. It's the store's space to control. But when you have Start Playing, you can accept only people that are compatible with your style and what you want to do because you're the one in control, not the game store. So I
Yeah,
think that's might be why you're like having this sort of surprising experience is because there's a stereotype that exists within the physical space that does not necessarily carry over into the digital space because you have the control to say no to those people.
yes, and that's something I do really appreciate about Start Playing. Someone had told me about them a while back, and I checked them out, and there are a lot of there's it's not a lot of red tape, but there's a lot of tape to get things going and up and running. I'm not sure if you've ever have DM'd on there or have talked to other DMs that have.
I have talked to other people. I took a look at it, but ultimately it was sort of like, I don't really want to do that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
so
I definitely talked to other people.
they do have a lot of guidelines. They're very detailed about, hey, tell us about yourself. You got to have this. You got to post this. And then when it comes to the campaign, it's like, hey, you got to put in this. You got to put in that. What is this about? What to expect? What's the play style? There's a lot of transparency, which sometimes you don't always get outside of Start Playing. So that's something I really do appreciate about Start Playing, and I just try to go even further on that with the
Yeah,
players and with
yeah,
the Reddit post or social media. I'm just upfront like, hey, this is what it is. If you're looking for this, it's probably not a great fit. And that's something I have really come to appreciate about Start Playing.
yeah. And those fields, from what I remember, aren't required. It's just sort of like if they're there and other people are giving that additional information and you're not, then you're not going to get as many like fish biting your bait kind of thing.
Yeah, they have updated it recently a couple of times where there are fields that you do have to fill them out now. And they will not let you submit for the game to be reviewed until A lot of the fields are filled in now. So that
Okay.
has changed recently. I'm not sure when that happened, but even with the campaigns I just announced recently, I tried to skip over a couple of things, and they're like, "Nope, you gotta put this in."
Yeah, I looked at it
Um,
like 2 years ago, so no surprise that things have changed since then.
yeah, there's a little bit more restriction now. You absolutely have to put in more information than you did in the past.
Gotcha, gotcha. I wanted to move to talking about some of the like cool little features that you mentioned in your Reddit post about like different things that are sort of unique homebrew to Tatara. So
Hmm.
you've mentioned like arc nodes, keystones, ley lines, and this like career job system. Those all seem pretty cool, so I wanted to talk more about those. Maybe start off with the ley lines.
Yeah, so the ley lines are kind of your typical fantasy ley lines that um, would be in those books. So they kind of work that way as well. There is the new world ley lines, and then there's the old world ley lines within Tatara itself, otherwise known as just like the old magic. The old magic ley lines haven't really been discovered too much. Players are interacting with that in the campaigns right now, trying to understand that and how that works. With that being said, it kind of ties into some of the other classes as well and the races. So magic is both naturally conceived as well as learned. So there are two different ways of being able to tap into the ley line. Secondly, there are um, with warlocks, for example, or paladins. Something I didn't necessarily like based on D&D was that you're kind of just locked to something. So in Tatara, you don't necessarily have to have a source of power. It can be something that you've created yourself, or not necessarily, a patron that has, or a god if you're a paladin. Something with clerics and stuff like that. I do allow it to be open so that you don't feel chained. So that kind of all mixes together. And I've seen some interesting creative things. I'm like, man, this is actually really cool. Um, with with the magic system on top of that, something that we encountered early on that we were like, man, this is actually kind of game breaking. This needs to be adjusted, otherwise it kind of ruins the entire premise of Tatara. Are certain spells like sending and teleport and long range distance. And quickly it was, oh, well, someone could just take a bomb, teleport into the city, and just blow it up and teleport out.
Yep.
And we're like, okay, well, that's kind of breaking. How do we do that? Are people really that stupid in this world that there isn't some sort of defense system? And that's where the arc nodes started to come into play for Magic. And they kind of act like cell towers, I guess. So there's kingdom-based ones, regional-based ones, and then within the regions, there's like, provinces or areas. Depending on the magic user, there is still the opportunity to break that. So if people are trying to misbehave, they can still do checks. They just have to get past it. And if they do, to an extent, depending on their check, alerts the authorities or it delays it or whatever it may be.
So are these like a defensive system or more like a like where they prevent stuff, or are they something that's like allowing teleportation and sending magic within like their network?
Yeah, both actually.
Okay.
Basically, it's like a magic grid, like a power grid, that all this can work through. With the keystones, they kind of work as like a pass, I guess, something you would hold on your person. If you have a keystone to different areas, let's say you're in Elmwood and you visited the capital of Aeon and you managed to get a keystone to the capital there, you'd be able to freely use it from one location to the other without having to bypass or get a check or anything like that. Just can do it. That also works for, hasn't been developed yet on a grand scale, but it also works for teleportation, being able to move across because you're registered within the system. So it's like, oh, we're gonna go ahead and teleport from here to here because we're at one of the nodes, and they can do it without a problem. That way, there's some sense of, hey, we know who you are, what type of person you are. This is okay. You can do this. So it's is a little bit of a nerf to Magic users, but it's something where with Magic users in D&D, of all the classes and races, they are the most game breaking for a lot of DMs, and it's just something, and it's something we just want to protect everyone's story and what they have developed or what they've created, because having someone come in and just completely destroy years of work of other players because they just felt like it is a terrible premise or mindset to have. Not that we get those players or that happens, but it's just something that we just plan for, should something like that occur. And that's why the arc nodes and the keystones were created.
Well, it was a common house rule to prevent those type of spells within third edition, and fourth edition also had a similar system with the arc nodes for teleportation to sort of control that,
Hmm.
so you couldn't just go popping around wherever you wanted. You need to go to like a sort of a teleportation train station to move around. Um, so it's definitely an idea that's been done before, and I don't see a reason to not also use it within fifth edition's rule set. Like being able to teleport reduces some of the like utility for a wizard, but you still kind of have it with the arc nodes. It's just like restricted to ways
Restricted.
that are not abusive. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's something, especially with a lot of the players that have been coming through. A lot of them are fourth or fifth edition. When I ran a couple of free trials with some players that were engaged, they absolutely hated it. They wanted to be able to like move across the world and all this other stuff. I'm like, that just will not work. Um, Plus we wanted to do something unique for Tatara and like, you know what, this would be really cool to have. There's these magic arc nodes. Why they're there, they're not necessarily built by the races, they're kind of already built into the world. And then the mages and the magic users of said kingdoms and regions are able to reinforce it to some degree. They're able to flavor it in their own way. And yeah, we just wanted to capitalize on that and do that ourselves.
Yeah. And the ley lines, are there like the connections between the arc nodes go along those? Is that the idea?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it'd be kind of like currents or flows throughout the world, and
Mm-hmm.
they do tend to branch off like rivers or streams. But yeah, they operate the same way, and then they're kind of run along those.
Gotcha. Did you make any modifications for like shorter range teleporting or sending magic, where like there's the blink dog monster that can do like dimension door around a battlefield to attack. So it's
Hmm.
still teleportation, but it's not really like something that lets it go like into the middle of a city and plant a bomb, like you said. It's just like that's not what it does.
Yeah, the shorter range stuff most of the time is not really affected. There are things like sending that may get interrupted if there's another magic user that is able to pick up on it, like if it's a layer or something. At those times, just because of narrative and because of the location, something might come up. But for the most part, a lot of the smaller ranged abilities are like Misty Step and stuff like that. Like they're not really affected.
Gotcha.
There's a couple other things too. Like there's some items that people come up with or we
Uh-huh.
develop. For example, one of them is called the Ether Vein Serum, and it's kind of a fun mechanic. It hasn't been done a whole lot with, but one of the campaigns is messing with it. But basically, they were able to mine the ley line, and it was an idea to be able to refill a spell slot without having to take a short rest or a long rest. But
Okay.
it's kind of like a drug, so there are side effects. There's 20 levels of it, so and it gets harder to get off of it. So there is an addiction to it. So that's something that we've come up with as players and as I guess you could say developers of the team I have. Um, there's different plants that come into play that will have different things. Tobacco, for example, is named casein, that a player decided they really wanted and did, and that is now lore based. So there's things like that that get developed from players that get added to the world that just become known or part of, the economy. So yeah, we're constantly doing stuff, trying things, and um,
Yeah.
like for example, the career ladder thing that's in beta right now. Three of the campaigns are trying it out. Yeah, so we're constantly bringing new ideas to the world.
Yeah, that's cool stuff. I mean, everyone always does little. I feel like everyone does little modifications, unless you're running purely modules.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's what makes it fun too, is having that freedom. So the hard part is finding that freedom without going full chaos mode. So there's always
Yeah,
that balance, and I think that's what makes it fun though. And um, yeah, it's 100% love it. There's nothing wrong with guided modules. There's nothing against those people. It's still a story. It's still fun. It's still fun to play it. It's like going through, a campaign or a book. You're like, I've read this before, but I enjoy this. I want to do it again. There's nothing wrong with that as well. So I just want to put that out there that I have nothing against that.
it's different. Like a module becomes more of a shared experience with other people in the online and at conventions where you can like talk about what'd you do with this part of the module and oh that was surprising and that kind of stuff
Hmm.
compared to doing your own homebrew campaign where it's more special and like real because it's sort of custom made, but it's harder to have like those broader conversations with people because you're not going to have as many like shared points
Shared
to
experiences.
discuss. Yeah.
Yeah.
um yeah, I definitely wanted to hear more about the career job system that you developed. So that's still in beta, so I'm guessing there's still some changes that might happen to it, but yeah, tell me what made you want to create that.
Yeah. So, what came up, what actually started this was we wanted to create like our own background feats and traits and stuff like that to some degree. And what kept happening was we would get into these moments where players would have a background and they were like, hey, my character's been an archaeologist for 10 years, for example. And here we have this magic user that's a student in a school that knows nothing about history really or archaeology, and they uncover and understand this 100-year-old thing. And we're like, that doesn't really make sense. It's not really grounded. And from that, we started testing with ideas of creating those types of roles and allow players to choose them. And then when they do something, they can continue to build that over time. There is a point system for it. So essentially, with the how it's set up right now is you can choose a primary career and then one is like a hobby secondary. And every session or in-game day within the world when you're playing, you may do a check, just a basic check. If you succeed on it within that field, you gain a point, which allows for your character to eventually hit these milestones at certain levels. They're in tens right now, where they get permanent stats or bonuses. Once they reach the next milestone, they keep the previous one and gain the next one. So it just continues to stack and get stronger and stronger. So that when those moments come, something that I also do is I pull in their backstory, their career, their person, giving them a moment to shine at some point, if not many, throughout the campaign. Because of that, it gives them a sense of, hey, no one else can pull this off. This is up to me to be able to make this moment happen. And it gives them that opportunity. And that's kind of why we've done this or trying to do this, are for those moments where someone wants to be doing that and discovering this or doing, there's things from cooks to politics to um, economic, civil, and crafting. Just different things we wanted to do and be like, hey, okay, someone can't just make a legendary item on a first attempt trying to forge something they've never done before, versus someone who's like, oh yeah, I'm a smith and I like doing this and I've been working at my craft for a while and they can continue to do that. So yeah, that's why we did it, and so far it's been going pretty well. It's probably only been in beta test for about 2 months now, 3 months, give or take, with multiple groups. The first group has been testing it for about 4 months, 5 months ish. But as of right now, people are enjoying it. It does seem like we're probably going to stick with it. There'll probably be changes over time, obviously, within each field. Right now, I have 11, and within those, there's roughly 20 careers within those fields.
20 each or
Yeah,
total?
20 in each field.
Ooh,
So
okay.
yeah,
Wow.
so there's a lot.
You're not really testing all of those, I don't imagine.
No, it's only the ones that people are interested in. Like I have them posted within the player Bible. Players will look at it. They're like, I like this. There's nothing really there. Can you throw in what you have? So then I go to my we. So I use Milanote. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Milanote, but I use Milanote. So I have where me and the three others on the team collect everything. We have everything sitting there, and then when we pull it into the player Bible, we just copy and paste it over essentially.
Yeah.
There's so much content that it's been overwhelming for them. So we've only maybe done a tenth, 2/10 of the content. And even then, it still seems like it's too much for everyone. So we've been trying to ease off as much as we can. But yeah, we'll just pull it over. People will look at it. They're like, I like this. Can you bring it in? They'll try it out, and they do that. So yeah, so not everything has been tested yet. A lot of the roles cook, and um, plants have been really popular. There's a few other ones. There's like weapon mastery, and instead of it just being as a whole, it's like archery or long swords or shields, stuff like that. And
I
there's
see.
all these things. So it does get pulled out that way. Like with civil and crafting, there's baker, engravers, carpentry, farmers, fishers, potters, masons, stuff like that. If people want to be able to make, additional side income and stuff like that on the side. So yeah, and if anybody else comes up with an idea, I'm like, let's throw it in there. Let's try it. So yeah, it's very, very large undertaking that hasn't been completed. Obviously, so it's probably going to take a couple of years to get through it. But all these players have been really excited to be a part of it because they get to kind of help shape it and define it. And they also get to choose to do this and feel like they're part of something special with their character for that. And that's kind of what I was hoping for. And I hope it works out, but we will see probably within the next 6 to 7 months how everyone feels about it. Right now, that's about somewhere between 17 and 20 players. I can't remember the exact count that are beta testing it right now.
Yeah, yeah. That's still a little bit early to have any concrete feeling about it because
Mhm.
it's still like, oh, this is fun because it's new and not necessarily because it's good, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, it's still going to take some time. I only have one person that has made it past the second milestone. So yeah, it's still very early on. We'll see how everyone feels about taking a background slash feat versus taking like a feat background from your typical class and race.
Have you read the Bastions stuff that was released?
I have not actually. I actually haven't been able to keep up with the probably the last year or so with any of the new content or anything being brought out. I've just been swamped with stuff. So I have not been able to look at anything new.
Yeah, it sounded very similar, but the idea there is that like players have like a base that they're developing, and it levels up with them, so they get like a bonus at level 5, another at level 9 for increasing the power of their base, and it has stuff like kitchen or garden or observatory that you build little sections on it
Mm,
that give little bonuses. It sounded quite similar, just like a sort of different direction they're going with that, where like you're developing a base and you have like staff that are doing things for you, versus what you have is more about you developing your own like profession outside of adventuring.
yeah, I absolutely love that. It's funny you bring that up because I've done similar stuff like that in past campaigns. One of them actually has that right now, where two of them actually have that, where I build all their not all of their maps. I do buy a lot from Patron or other people that develop maps, but I do use Incarnate quite a bit. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I've noticed your map was done with Incarnate.
Yes, yep, absolutely. So I do like to build them. I try to do it as much as I can for as many locations and roads and etc. So I try to do all of it myself. With that being said, there's a couple of campaigns where there are locations that they have where I'll use the map. And I'm like, hey, this is what you guys have. Based on what you guys do, your resources, how you develop it, where you get to, you can upgrade it. Here's this long list of items for said scenario world, because it'll vary from different locations. This is where you can put this is what it's going to do. And then I'll update the map, add that location or part of the building or whatever. So yeah, I absolutely love that. And uh, I think that's great. It's one of those things where the more the better because it feels more alive, but at the same time, if someone's trying to do everything, it's way too much. It's way too complex. There's too much going on. So that's something I do have to be wary of as a DM is making sure I'm not giving people too much so that it's untrackable. So there are some guidelines, like for the career letter, for example, where in Foundry I will give them their own player journal. And within the player journal, I'll post their backstory for them that they've given me just so that they have it on hand while they're in game, as well as like any items or trinkets or letters that they receive. But I also have like their career ladder in there. And I can check it at any point, but I do state that, hey, if you guys are using the career ladder, you are responsible for keeping up with it. So if you do fall behind and I overlook it and you're behind a point or two, that's on you guys. So there are some guidelines like that. Like, hey, if you're going to do this and take on more due to the sheer amount of stuff that's going on in the world of Tara, you do have to have some accountability and responsibility to make that happen
Yeah.
for the amount of engagement that you want to have. So people can go as much as they want in depth, and as detailed as they want. There's just a point that I will cut off and be like, hey, I can't manage this and 20 other people on top of everything else that's going on. So you do have to make sure that you are keeping up with that. And I'll be able to go back and look at it and glance at it if I need to. But yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Like, it's a lot to ask the DM to track everything, especially when you have all these extra subsystems. And ideally, with more invested players, like in a paid experience, they're more likely to want to at least track their own character.
Yeah, yeah. If they're they'll definitely be like, well, my character did this, and the DM's like, well, you did this. And they're like, no, no, no. I've got the notes right here. You know, they like to keep up with it. They like to make sure that they're not getting shafted by the DM. So yeah, it does make it easier, and hopefully it doesn't get too much more complex. But you never know. A lot of years to come, so we'll see what happens.
Mhm.
There is some. I've had a lot of people ask me if I will ever turn Tatara into its own ATRPG. Maybe one day, 10, 15 years from now, I don't know. But that is in the back of my mind. I'm always thinking about that and rules and systems and whatnot. But I don't know if it'll ever get to that point. But the possibility, it's been thrown out there from players. So I have put it in the back of my mind and think about it from time to time about doing something like that.
Yeah, or try other systems for it.
Oh yeah,
Be one
yeah,
way to sort of
absolutely.
explore that.
Hmm.
I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to ask you. Do you have anything that you else want to say, or questions that you wish I'd asked you?
Let's see. I guess it would be more so you have like the big bad in campaigns. There's never truly like a big bad, but maybe that or which is not necessarily needed. Because again, I kind of answer that with like the morally gray type things. There's a lot of morally gray villains, I guess you could say, throughout the world. Again, it's never clear.
So yeah, tell me about like in a campaign. You always have to have like villains in a campaign, and I know you said it's like morally gray, but like what's a sort of demonic character that everyone has to like ally and defeat. Kind of like the villains within like World of Warcraft, where it's always like Alliance and Horde have to unite to defeat the baddie.
Oh yes, yeah. So actually, the very first campaign would fit that actually really well. So obviously, the races have to come together because they don't want to be wiped out. For those players, they had to deal with I guess you could say it was a cosmic entity, which is tied to the overall plot, in which only those players have seen or encountered. The great thing about that is the other players don't know if it's actually true or not, and if they just made it up to take control of Elmwood. But yeah, all of my final fights, I guess you could say, are very challenging, and the combat, I guess, does get difficult. Even with all the other big bads, I would say there's always some degree of understanding for the players. Like there's always going to be a couple of players who are like, this, this person has a point, or this deity has a point, or this guy has a point. I kind of don't want to kill this guy because of this. And I think perspective is very important and makes things messy and unclear for everyone. And I think that makes for great storytelling because if everything's black and white, then where's the struggle in that with the moral compass?
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, I always finish up by asking like what DM advice you have to give other people, and I feel like you kind of already answered that with like talking about your survey before. But if you have anything else you want to share about that,
Yeah, I think with a lot of DMs that I have played under in the past, and I've met some really great ones, and I'm like, man, this is phenomenal. Setting your own guidelines for yourself where you go, okay, I will not go past this point when someone says, I'm going to do this or I don't want to play with this. You just have to accept your identity, who you are, and what you want to represent. If you allow others to choose what type of DM you're going to be, then it's going to be less than ideal for yourself and you won't enjoy it as much. And that passion will begin to fade and burn out. So yeah, basically be yourself and set your own expectations. And then for players that don't like it, they're just not the right fit, and that's okay.
yeah, cool. Thank you. Well, it was great having you on the show, Travis. Thanks for being here and telling us all about Tetara. Where can people like wanna join in with Tetara if there's like a vacancy?
Yep. So as of right now, the best way is to follow through Start Playing. If people are interested in joining the Discord, I just need a message from them through Start Playing so I know where they're at, so that if I do see their request for another game, then I know who it is because I like to keep track of it. And then they can get in that way and be able to keep track through the Discord announcements because I do announce everything on the Discord in advance to posting it on Start Playing or social media. So yeah, that is the best way to do it.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, thanks again, Travis. This is really nice.
Yeah, thank you.
That was Travis telling us about Tetara. If you're interested in Tetara, you can learn more by going to Travis's Start Playing profile, which you can find in the episode description. And if you're interested in that book series, Sanctum of Avum, that Travis described, you can also find a link to that in the episode description. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode of Setting the Stage, please consider giving us a nice review on whatever you're listening to it on. And if you are interested in being a guest on the show, then there's also a survey to get you started on that in the episode description. And as always, we want to thank our Patreon supporters. And this time, that's Darren. Thank you, Darren. And thank you, everyone else, for listening.